Good morning, everyone. Today we're going to continue talking about fractions, and I'm going to start today's lesson with a question. So, would you rather share this pizza with one other person or with 4 people? And why? So, stop the video, think about that question, and explain your answer. So, let's begin by sharing this pizza with one other person. Now, when we share pizza or share any food, we want to be fair. So we have to make sure that the pieces are equal size. So they have to be the same size. So I could share my pizza by cutting it like this. So now I have 1 piece for me and 1 piece for my friend that I'm sharing with. I've cut the pizza in half. So a fraction that I could use to represent this is 1/2. But what would happen if I cut the pizza again so I could share it with 4 people? So I'm going to make sure my pieces are the same size because we want to be fair. There we go. So now I've cut my pizza into 4 pieces, 1 piece for me and 3 other pieces for my friends. So if I were to use a fraction to represent how much of the pizza I would get, well, I would get 1 slice out of 4. So I would get 1/4 of the pizza. So what happened to my slice when I went from having half of the pizza to 1/4 of the pizza? Well, when I had half the pizza, my slice was a lot bigger. And then when I shared it with 4 people, when I had 1/4 of the pizza, my slice got a lot smaller. So 1/2 is bigger than 1/4. So now if you have a piece of paper handy, what I'd like you to do is cut it into a long strip that kind of looks like the picture I have here. If you don't have paper, that's okay. You can just watch me do the example. But if you do have a piece of paper, go ahead and cut it into a long strip, just like what I have on our slideshow here. So if you need to pause the video so that you have time to cut the paper, you can go ahead and do that now. So we're starting with 1 whole piece of paper, but what would happen if you wanted to share it with 2 people? So a piece for you and a piece for Madame Momini. How would you cut the paper so that there would be enough pieces for the both of us? And remember, when you're cutting pieces, they have to be the same size. So you can't have a huge piece and then Madame Momini has a small piece. They have to be equal size. So go ahead and cut your paper so that there's a piece for you and a piece for Madame Momini. So now your paper should look something like this. So there should be 1 piece for you and 1 piece for me. If we were to give a fraction to our paper now, what would the fraction be? Well, we have 1 piece for you, so that would be our numerator, so 1, and then 1 piece for me. And then there's 2 pieces in total. So the fraction we would use to represent our paper now would be 1/2. You get half the paper and I get half of the paper. Now, if you wanted to share the paper with 4 people, how would you cut the paper now? So make sure that all of your pieces are equal and there should be enough pieces for 4 people. So now your paper should look something like this. You should have 4 equal pieces. So a piece for you, a piece for Madame Momini, a piece for Isaac, and a piece for Connor. Now, if we were to give a fraction to our paper now, what would the fraction be for each piece? Well, if we take a look at the first piece here, there's 1 piece. Where's my eraser? 1. And that's our numerator. And the denominator is how many pieces there are in total. So it would be 4 because I made 4 equal pieces. So each piece represents 1/4. So 1/4 for you, 1/4 for Madame Momini, 1/4 for Isaac, and 1/4 for Connor. Oh, there we go. Now I want you to go ahead and cut that paper so that you have 8 pieces. We want to share with 8 people in the class. So go ahead and do that now. You can pause the video if you need to. And when you're done cutting your paper, it should look something like this. So now we have a piece for you, a piece for Madame Omini, a piece for Connor, a piece for Alyssa, a piece for Amelia, a piece for Quinn, a piece for Camelia, and a piece for Macy. So what would our fraction be for our strip of paper now? So think about what you would say for your own piece. So you have one piece, so that would be our numerator. Let me just find the eraser here. Oh, come on. So 1 is our numerator. And how many pieces do we have in total? Well, we have 8 in total. So our fraction is now 1/8. So if you have noticed, these are all unit fractions. So we talked about unit fractions in the last lesson. And we use unit fractions to break down a fraction so that we can count each individual part. So the first fraction we have here is 1/2 and 1/2. So I'm starting with 1/2 and I'm adding another half to it. So 1/2 plus 1/2 equals 2 out of 2. But remember, when we have the same numerator and denominator, we can just scratch that out and we can say it's 1 whole. So 1/2 and 1/2 equals 1 whole. Now let's move on to the next fraction that we made, 1/4. So we counted each quarter using our unit fraction 1/4. So 1/4 and 1/4 is 2 quarters. And then 2 quarters plus another 1/4 is 3 quarters. And then 3 quarters plus another 1/4 is 4 quarters. So remember that when the numerator and denominator are the same, we don't have to say 4/4. We can just call it 1 whole. So 4 1/4 equals 1 whole. Now we're going to move on to our eighths that we made. So the bottom strip of paper we cut into 1/8 pieces. So 1/8 here is our unit fraction. So really what we did was 1/8 plus 1/8, which is 2/8, plus another 1/8, which is 3/8, plus another 1/8, which is 4/8, and then another 1/8 is 5/8, plus another 1/8 is 6/8, plus another 1/8 is 7/8, and plus 1/8, our last one, is 8/8. And what do we do when the numerator and denominator are the same? We can say 8/8, but it's a lot easier just to say 1 because it's 1 whole. So 8 1/8 equals 1 whole. So now we're going to do a word problem together. Which fraction is the largest? Use pictures and words to explain your thinking. So the fractions we're going to be using today are 1/4, 1/2, 1/8, and 1/3. So which one is the biggest? Which one would have the biggest piece? Would it be 1/4, 1/2, 1/8, or 1/3? So to answer this question, we can use the same model that we used in the last exercise with the strip of paper. So I'm going to start with my strip of paper here. That's 1 whole. So now if I was to divide that 1 whole into 1/2, so I'm going to do 1/2 first, I'm just going to cut it down the middle. So now that I have 1 piece for me, and there's 2 pieces in total, so that's 1/2. Now let's do 1/3. So I'm going to take that paper again, but this time I have to divide it into 3 equal parts because our denominator is 3, which means we have to have 3 equal parts. So I'm going to do 1 part here, another part here, and then my last part at the end there. Okay, so now I have 3 equal parts. Now I'm going to do 1/4. So I'm going to take my piece of paper again. That's my 1 whole, and I have to have 4 equal parts because our denominator is 4. So I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, and 4. They look more or less equal. And last but not least, I'm going to do 1/8. So I'm going to take my piece of paper, and how many equal parts do I need? I need 8 because my denominator is 8. So I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So what fraction would be the largest? Well, this is my half here, so I'm going to write half here and half here. Those are my 2 unit fractions. So 1/2 and another 1/2. 2 1/2 equals 2 out of 2, which equals a whole. Then I'm going to do my thirds here. So 1/3 plus 1/3 plus 1/3 equals 3/3 or equals a whole. Now my quarters are down here, so I have 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4. So 4 1/4 pieces equals 4 quarters, which equals a whole. And last but not least, I'm going to do my eighths like this. So I have 1 1/8, 2 1/8, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have to go down here. 7, 8. So I have, whoops, oh, I made a mistake there. So I have 8 1/8 pieces, which equals 8/8, which also equals a whole. So what fraction is the largest? Well, I would get the largest piece if I cut it in half. So 1/2 is the largest fraction, because as you can see here, the 2 pieces that we made are bigger than thirds, they're bigger than quarters, they're bigger than eighths. So 1/2 is the largest fraction. So as always, now it's time for you to practice what you learned. So go back to our lesson page to play the games and then complete the exit pass for today, and I'll see you tomorrow.